Stop building vending machines and calling it AI. Welcome to NeuraArc. In this video, we will go through the concept of Agentic RAG. Agentic RAG will help you to increase the application of your AI application by 95%. So, let's begin a journey with us for Agentic RAG. So we have seen in the earlier episodes the traditional RAG. That explains the context of how RAG system works. But there are still problems with the traditional RAGs. The problems like hallucinations at some times and the missing context. Hallucination occurs in cases where your retrieval is failed to retrieve the relevant chunks in the topmost k order what you have defined. So in that case, you will get the wrong or inadequate output and your system may hallucinate. And the biggest problem with the traditional rack system is losing or missing a context. So what does that mean? So let's take an example of a big paragraph where you have explained something about the healthcare or any disease like asthma in the first paragraph. And in later, you are explaining with the same context by referring this. So you are using this as a word. Now, when you are creating a chunks that in that context, this keyword may lose a context at the time of retrieval. So we will see this example going ahead, but this is the exact where you or your RAG lose a context at the time of retrieval, because how the RAG will identify what was this or what was that. Whenever these pronouns occur, the context needs to be preserved. And this is the point where exactly the traditional RAG fails. So the answer to this question or the problem is agentic RAG. So why do you think this problem can occur? The problem is the traditional RAG is exactly works in the pipeline manner. It is not having any loop or self correction system. This is the flaw of the traditional RAG, and where the agentic AI exactly pins this point, and it has a loop system which is open loop, and that is how it self correct and produces the expected result. We will see this how agentic RAG works in this video further. So before jumping into the agentic RAG concept, let me give you the clear example in the layman's term. So assume you have to purchase something and you are at vending machine. So in vending machine, what do you do generally? So you just give or you just enter the item ID what you want and you wait for it. If that item is broken or you didn't like it, then there is no system of giving it back. You have to buy it. And if you go to the shopkeeper, the exactly the things are getting different over there in the experience, where if shopkeeper gives you something and you didn't like it, then you will tell shopkeeper, no, I want in this way. So shopkeeper will go back, he will search in this cupboards or basement and give you the expected item. This is the exact difference between the traditional RAG and the agentic RAG. The vending machine example is referring the traditional RAG, where is exactly one-way flow. And the other hand, Shopkeeper will give you an experience of the agentic RAG. Because if you observe the example of Shopkeeper, it works in a loop. If you didn't like it, you're asking back to the shopkeeper and he is giving back the results to you. So that is the similarity with the agentic RAG. Now we will cover this in a technical manner. So this diagram or this pipeline will show you the structural flaw with a system of linear manner. When user enters a query, it performs a vector search and it will retrieve the output in one shot and it will start generating the output. If this vector search goes wrong, then your generation is going to be impacted. And the key three reasons for this is one, fire and forget, the zero feedback, and blind spots. So fire and forget means once you fire a query and you retrieved top key results, then it's done for the RAG. It is not going to keep in the context what you have entered, whether I have fetched the right top key results or not. Yeah, there are some ways what we have seen in the basic traditional RAG as well, like re-ranking and all that stuff, but you cannot achieve the 100% accuracy over there. Earlier, then the next would be zero feedback. In traditional RAG, there is no absolutely mechanism that getting a feedback within the RAG system itself about the retrieved chunk. Are they with respect to the answers, what the query has been submitted or not? There is no mechanism. And the third would be blind spots. The blind spots is exactly referring the use cases where we have used in the documents the pronouns like this, that, or it. Because being a human, definitely our brains are trained to correlate the exact context. But how we are going to refer that in the chunks while retrieving it according to the query, and exactly where the traditional RAG fails. That is why an iterative option is the solution for it. So iterative reasoning always going to be outperform than the static retrieval, because there is a loop where you actually get a feedback and you work accordingly. So there are three pillars of this iterative reasoning. One is a contextual persistence, second, reasoning over a retrieval, and third is dynamic recovery. In the contextual persistence, we can train our RAG system the way brain works to exactly recall the context. This is about retrieving the context with specific to the pronouns, this and that. And this leads towards the reasoning over the retrieval age. It moves beyond a basic string matching and actually understand what exactly the query is meant for from the marketing or business or any logic application that we are expected to get the output from the RAG. And dynamic recovery refers to the failure. The scenario which we discussed, if somehow RAG fails to retrieve relative top k chunks, then this failure will be getting handled in the iterative approach. That is why the contextual persistence and reasoning over retrieval and dynamic recovery are the three key strategies that helps RAG, the traditional RAG, to be more efficient. And if we attach the power of LLM, then it becomes agentic. Let's see how it gets developed. So this is the exactly the loop strategy needs the sensors. So query, reasoning, the retrieval strategy or retrieval point and the critic review. These kind of a typical nodes which will act as a sensors to take an decisive action. The critic point shown over here will be going to be the controller. We will see how it plays an vital role in the agentic RAG over the period of this course. So, to resolve this complex loop strategy, we are going to see the four important steps. First is the ingestion, second is the store, third will be the hunt, and four will be the review. Now, these are different nodes, and we will bifurcate these different nodes with three agents. So, researcher agent will perform an activity regarding the ingestion where we are feeding the documents or for example any corporate policy or health policies from the WHO guidelines and all that stuff. In the store, the researcher will actually divides that into a chunk. It will add a metadata, assign a chunking index and all that typical stuff. The analyst is responsible for retrieving the chunks with respect to your query. This is the hunt action. It is hunting for the meaning what you are expected from the output of the query. And this critic will be used for reviewing the things. So critic will closely monitor that whatever the output has been produced from the retrieval phase, if review or critic is satisfied with the output, it will pass it to the fifth step, that is generation. Otherwise, it will ask the analyst agent, that means critic agent will ask analyst agent to perform the retrieval again. So this is how this looping works. So to simplify this entire strategy of these four nodes, we will see the communication between the three agents only. So analyst will ask, sorry, the analyst will act as a front desk where it will intercepts user intent. If it has the gap found like this or that pronouns has been used, it will signals for the more retrieval. So for that there are different strategies like giving the chunk index what we just talked about a minute ago is going to get used. Then the researcher. So researcher is just like managing a warehousing where you if you ask something it is going to fetch for you. So the way it fetches the top k results are going to get reviewed by the critic. This will act as a shop manager where it finds the quality is bad, it is not meeting the quality, it will send it back and ask researcher to fetch that again. It in that case you can say critic may act as a guardrail about the quality of the retrieval. And then the next agent would be who is going to write or who is going to generate. That will not considered as of now in this video because that's a different ball game altogether. We are concentrating how the closed loop system works in the agentic RAG. Now we discussed about this critic being a reviewer or critic being the shop manager. Let's understand more about the critic because critic is the controller. Controller means the quality or the looping strategy, how much time or how many times you want to loop through the retrieval process is going to decided by the critic. So that is why critic deserves to get a special attention. So here we have mentioned like critics acts as a system's pressure wall. I mean, these are the terminologies where the agent critic is preventing your application or your system of RAG from failing. So these actually the three top things that actually taken care by critic while controlling the loop. The first is reference solution, the main problem which we started referring the pronoun. So just an example, if you retrieved something where it contains this is the process what we discussed earlier. Now, when the critic founds that word has been referred in the chunk, it will ask retrieval mechanism or the research agent to retrieve that specific chunk which is referred for the this word. So it will go back and give you what exactly the process you were looking for. We will have to deep dive in this retrieval mechanism about the pronouns, how getting handled in the next video. Just right now focus on the concept of this agentic RAG. And definitely if the failure is happening, then critic is looping through. That is how it controls the hallucination. And the third, critic is even controlling a cost. The one main thing in the agentic RAG, we expect the LLMs are getting associated. So we have three agents. The first one is Analyst, where we are passing a data and it is dividing a chunks into a chunks. Third, Researcher and Critic. So these all three agents will have the LLMs associated with themselves. And when we are looping through more and more, as you know, the tokens will be given as an input and output more and the cost will increase. So when to cut the loop, that is the main, the cost effective part, and the critic is responsible for that as well. So these are the three main things that is governed by critic. Now we will just have the comparison between the traditional RAG what we saw in the basic videos and the agentic RAG what we are just thought about it or discussed about it. Regarding a logic, you can say the traditional RAG is static or a linear one, where agentic RAG is dynamic because of the power of LLM that we have started associating with the every agent, and recursive, of course, the looping mechanism. Failure mode for the static RAG is the silent hallucination because you wouldn't be able to recognize because you have retrieved the top k chunks for yourself. But that can lead the static hallucination in case where it loses a context. But in the agentic RAG, the critic controls the loop and that critic agent will act for the self correction. The search style, if you want to compare for traditional RAG, then it's like fixed keywords matching for the meaning, where the semantic navigation goes deeper and deeper for the agentic RAG. That is why the reliability of the traditional RAG is about 60% accuracy or 65% accuracy, where the looping mechanism provides the more accuracy up to the 95%. And this comparison shows the exactly the difference between the traditional RAG and agentic RAG. So stop building prompts and start building self-correcting systems using agentic RAG. Further in the series, we will go having a deep dive in agentic RAG using some Python and Lang graph coding examples, and also we will see the different strategies for cost optimization for agentic RAG. So stay tuned with us and do not forget to subscribe NeuraArc AI Architecture channel. Thank you.